Mahabharata. I invite you to listen to an audiobook based on the Mahabharata. It is one of the major Hindu epic poems. This poem contains about 200,000 verses, and it includes the Bhagavad Gita. I wish you a pleasant listening experience and the exploration of the wisdom contained in the first book called Adi Parva. Salutations to Narayana, indeed the greatest among men. Goddess Sarasvati, indeed victory as well. O Brahmins, please guide me so that I can confront the evil serpent Takshaka, who killed my father. Do you know a ritual through which I could throw Takshaka and his relatives into the blazing fire? Since he burned my father with the fire of his venom, I wish to burn the sinful serpent in the sacrificial fire. Adi Parva, the beginning book. Anachramatica. Commencement. In ancient times, deep within the Naimisha forest, King Saunaka prepared for a grand 12-year sacrificial ceremony. He invited sages from 10 different directions, and the atmosphere was steeped in devotion and solemnity. Prayers ascended to the heavens, and sacred scriptures were studied in silence. In the shade of ancient trees, sages contemplated the life stories of great sages and delved into the mysteries of existence. During that time, a mysterious wanderer appeared, Ugrashrava, also known as Saudi. His silver hair and ageless wisdom exuded something extraordinary. As he took his place within the circle, the atmosphere took on a mysterious radiance. Saudi commenced the tale of a book regarded as the greatest and most magnificent work on earth. Mahabharata is not merely a collection of words, it is a mighty narrative that transported people into the realms of wisdom, morality, heroism, and virtues. It is a book that not only shields from sins but also cleanses them, dispels darkness, comforts the lonely, and guides the lost. If only people knew the entirety of Mahabharata, the world would be a more perfect place. Saudi conveyed that Mahabharata is a colossal book, encompassing 6 million verses in its full scope. Yet only the gods knew its entire content, while humans were acquainted with only a small fraction, approximately 100,000 verses. It was these words that uplifted the souls of people. He also narrated the story of Vaisampayana, the great sage who recited this divine song during King Janamajaya's serpent sacrifice. Vaisampayana had learned this tale from his master, the author of Mahabharata, the great sage known as Vedavyasa or Krishnadvapayana. All assembled yearned to hear Mahabharata as it had been passed down through tradition. Welcome to the first chapter entitled, The Ritual Slaughter of the Snakes of King Janamejaya. The first tale, The Curse of Sarama. Long, long ago, when King Janamejaya of the lunar dynasty was participating in a prolonged sacrificial ritual on the fields of Kurukshetra, an unexpected incident occurred. At this ceremony, a dog appeared, which turned out to be the son of Sarama, a messenger of the king of the gods, Indra. 3 brothers of the king brutally attacked the hapless dog, even though it had done no harm. The dog, battered and howling in pain, fled to its mother, recounting the savage attack, though it hadn't even approached the sacrificial animal, let alone licked it. Nevertheless, it was punished before it could violate the law. Enraged, Sarama set out for the Kurukshetra field, where the unfinished sacrificial ritual was still ongoing, and turned to King Janamejaya with a curse, saying, "O great king, your negligence has caused suffering to my innocent son. Therefore, may misfortune befall you without fault." After the conclusion of the ceremony and his return to his capital, Hastinapura, King Janamejaya was troubled by Sarama's curse. He decided to find a priest who could counteract the effects of this curse with his spiritual powers. After extensive searching, he found such a priest in the solitary hermitage of the sage Srutasravas. The king visited the hermitage during his deer hunt and saw the sage's son, Somasravas. He immediately realized that he wanted him as his priest. King Janamejaya then approached the sage Srutasravas with a polite request to take his son as a teacher. The sage agreed to this on the condition that the king accepted the fact that his son had been conceived through the power of his asceticism and was born from a snake that had absorbed his seed. He was a half-serpent, half-human being with immense spiritual powers that could neutralize the effects of all evil, except for a sin against the supreme God. Furthermore, the king had to understand that his son had sworn to give away everything he possessed to the Brahmins if asked to do so. Without hesitation, King Janamejaya agreed to these conditions. He entrusted the Brahmin Somasravas with the role of priest and teacher. He immediately informed his 3 brothers, who were responsible for beating the son of Sarama. Reassured, he instructed them to obey everything his new priest would command. He himself left the capital of his kingdom and set out to conquer Takshashila. The second tale. Brahmin Utanka seeks revenge on the serpent king Takshaka. When King Janamejaya returned to his capital in Hastinapura after a victorious conquest of Takshashila, a Brahmin named Utanka arrived at his court, seeking the king's help in seeking revenge against the serpent king Takshaka. Utanka was a disciple of Brahmin Veda, who also served as a teacher to warriors like King Janamejaya and King Pausya. Typically, Brahmin teachers place great emphasis on their students' obedience, even at the cost of their own sacrifices. However, Brahmin Veda, despite having undergone severe trials to attain complete knowledge, always treated his students with compassion and did not demand absolute obedience from them. One day, when Brahmin Veda was heading to the palace of one of his royal disciples and protectors, he entrusted Utanka with the care of his home, asking him to ensure that nothing was amiss during his absence. As Veda's absence prolonged, his wife asked Utanka to take his place in her marital duties. However, Utanka refused, arguing that such an act would be a transgression. His teacher had instructed him to look after the home but not at the expense of committing a transgression. Upon Veda's return, he praised Utanka for his integrity and told him that he considered him a completed student, wishing him success. In accordance with tradition, Utanka asked his teacher how he could repay him for the knowledge he had gained. Veda, unable to come up with a request himself, directed Utanka to his wife. She asked Utanka to go to King Pausya's palace and fetch the earrings worn by the king's wife for an upcoming ceremony. On his way to King Pausya's palace, Utanka encountered a massive bull, on which a majestic man was riding. It turned out that this was Airavata, the king of serpents, a demonic serpent who had taken the form of a bull that was being ridden by Lord Indra, the king of the gods. Indra instructed Utanka to consume the bull's dung, which Utanka initially refused. However, Indra gave him the example of how even Veda had consumed dung in the past, convincing Utanka to eat it, which turned out to be an elixir of immortality. Upon reaching King Pausya's palace, Utanka explained his purpose to the king and requested the earrings from the king's wife. However, Pausya decided to send Utanka to the women's quarters to ask his wife directly for the earrings. Utanka went there but could not find the king's wife. When he informed Pausya of this, the king said they should search together. Utanka was relieved to receive help and gladly agreed. King Pausya explained to him that sometimes it was difficult to find his wife. Utanka performed a purification ritual and once again went to the women's quarters. This time, he managed to see the king's wife, who agreed to give him the earrings but warned him that the serpent king Takshaka also desired those earrings. Utanka assured her that he was unable to defeat Takshaka. Utanka was ready to return, but King Pausya tried to detain him to honor him during a ceremony in honor of ancestors. However, Utanka chose a quick meal as he was running out of time to return to his teacher. King Pausya agreed to this. After delivering the meal, Utanka found it to be cold and contaminated, and in anger, he cast a curse of blindness on the king. Offended by the curse, the king retaliated with a curse of infertility on Utunka. However, after a moment and upon closer examination of the food, the king realized that it was the hair of one of the cooks that had contaminated the meal, not Utunka. The king acknowledged his mistake and requested Utunka to lift the curse. But Utunka did not want to revoke it, and instead neutralized it by making a promise that the king would regain his sight, provided he lifted his own curse. King Pausia did not agree, so Utunka revealed that the curse was null and void because the king himself admitted that the food had been contaminated by one of his cooks. Then, Utunka took the earrings and set off on his journey back. During his journey, he noticed a naked beggar who appeared and disappeared and bathed in a lake. Utunka, tired from his long journey, also decided to take a bath. He placed the earrings on the ground and immersed himself in the purifying waters. At that moment, he saw that the beggar was, in fact, the serpent king Takshaka, who had assumed the form of a beggar. Takshaka took the earrings and disappeared into a crack in the earth, leading to the serpent kingdom. Utunka pursued Takshaka, and although he recited hymns in praise of the serpents, Takshaka did not return the earrings. Soon, he saw two women, she who places and she who weaves, spinning cloth on a loom where black and white threads symbolized night and day. He also saw a wheel turned by 6 boys with 12 spokes, representing the 6 seasons of the year. Finally, he saw a handsome man who was none other than the rain god, Indra. Upon seeing them, Utunka began to chant hymns in their honor. Indra said, "O Brahman, I am pleased with your hymn. Tell me what you desire, and I will fulfill your wish." Utunka replied, "O Indra, grant me power over the serpents." Indra said, "Blow into this horse seat." Utunka did so, and the inflated horse seat emitted flames from its mouth. It turned out to be the god of fire. Utunka realized this, and Takshaka, terrified of fire, returned the earrings and asked Utunka to retrieve them. Utunka did not wish to inflict suffering on him and agreed to return the earrings. After regaining the earrings, Utunka feared whether he would return in time to his teacher's wife. Indra noticed his anxiety and lent him a horse that transported him back to his teacher's home in the blink of an eye. The Brahmin's wife was relieved that Utunka returned in time, as she was prepared to impose a curse on him. When Utunka appeared before his teacher, Brahmin Veda, he inquired why it had taken him so long. Utunka narrated his adventure, and how he lured the serpent king Takshaka into the world of serpents. Brahmin Veda explained that it was thanks to Indra's grace that he had managed to return from the serpent world and retrieve the earrings. He then acknowledged that Utunka's education had been completed and allowed him to depart. Third tale. The death of King Parikshit. Utunka, fueled by resentment and a desire for revenge against Takshaka, approached King Janamejaya to appeal to his royal duty for vengeance. He told the king that the bite of Takshaka had been the cause of his father's death, King Parikshit, and that the serpent king had committed treachery by attacking Parikshit and utilizing his powers. Utunka convinced King Janamejaya that conducting the snake sacrifice would allow him to avenge Takshaka and his clan and fulfill his duty towards his deceased father. His speech ignited the king's hatred for Takshaka, who he believed was responsible for Parikshit's death. The king asked his advisors to explain the circumstances of his father's death, and they recounted the following story. King Parikshit, who was already in his old age, once set out on a hunting expedition into the forest to hunt deer. Injuring a deer, he followed it deep into the woods. This act foretold his death, as never before had a deer he shot survived. In the forest, he encountered a silent hermit. Unbeknownst to him, the hermit had taken a vow of silence. Parikshit asked him if he had seen the wounded deer, but the hermit remained silent. Irritated, the king wrapped a dead snake around the hermit's neck, unaware of the hermit's vow of silence. The hermit continued to remain silent. The king eventually changed his mind and began his journey back to the city, leaving the hermit with the dead snake around his neck. He deeply regretted his actions and felt ashamed. The hermit had a son named Shringen, who was quick to anger and held grudges. One day, one of Shringen's friends ridiculed him, stating that his father carried a corpse on his shoulders, while Shringen, though powerful and authoritative, couldn't be arrogant towards others. The friend revealed that it was King Parikshit who had wrapped a dead snake around his father's neck, even though his father had committed no offense. This enraged Shringen, and he cursed King Parikshit, declaring that he would die of snakebite within 7 days. Shringen went to his father's hermitage and told him about the curse he had laid upon King Parikshit. His father tried to convince him to withdraw the curse, as Brahmins should not seek vengeance against kings, even if they commit wrongs, as kings protect them under the law and enable them to practice their spiritual pursuits. The hermit advised his son that Brahmins should always forgive kings, warning him that the anger of an ascetic could destroy all the merits gained through asceticism. Ultimately, controlling one's anger and having the ability to forgive are key aspects of spiritual development for Brahmins and ascetics. Upon hearing about Parikshit's curse, King Janamejaya decided to take precautions. He built a platform high on a pillar, on which he would stay for 7 days, guarded by physicians and Brahmins, ruling the kingdom. On the 7th day, the sage Kashyapa set out towards Hastinapura to cure the king after the snakebite. Kashyapa sought wealth and merits through this act of aid. When Takshaka learned of his arrival, he used subterfuge, assuming the form of a tiny insect, and sent a fruit with several snakes disguised as Brahmins to the king. King Parikshit accepted the gift, but noticed a small copper-colored insect with black eyes in one of the fruits. In jest, he showed it to his ministers, laughing about how he had conquered Takshaka. Unaware of the imminent danger, he placed the insect on his neck, feigning the loss of his senses. The king was still laughing when the insect transformed back into its true form, a serpent, and tightened its coil around the king's royal neck. Fourth tale. King Janamejaya orders the snake sacrifice. After hearing the story narrated by his advisors about the death of his father, the noble King Parikshit, King Janamejaya became convinced that the culprit behind his father's demise was the wicked serpent king, Takshaka. It was Takshaka who had caused the impetuous curse of a Brahmin's son to become a reality. Takshaka had used his venom to burn the life out of King Parikshit's body. Now, it was time to take appropriate action against him. King Parikshit had been a just ruler, and if not for Takshaka's intervention, he would still be alive. Janamejaya believed that it was Takshaka's pride and anger that had turned him against Kashyapa, who had come to Hastinapura to neutralize the curse and cure the king in case of a snakebite. The attempt to bribe the Brahmin not to revive the king was a heinous crime committed by Takshaka. Janamejaya decided to avenge his father's death, both to satisfy his family's honor, his own feelings, and to fulfill his royal duty. He summoned his court priests, who were well versed in the intricacies of conducting sacrifices, and addressed them with the following words. O Brahmins, I need your wisdom and knowledge to perform the sacrifice of the serpent Takshaka, which will annihilate this wicked serpent and his lineage for generations to come. Do you know the ritual that will allow me to lure Takshaka and his kin into the sacrificial fire? Since he burnt my father with his venom, I want to burn this criminal serpent in the sacrificial flames. The court priests replied, O king, there is indeed such a ritual, designated by the gods for you. It is described in the sacred scriptures as the Sarpa Satra or Seshayaga. You, as the sovereign and ruler of men, are the only one qualified to be the sacrificer in this yajna. We, the priests, are well equipped to conduct this ritual. During this ceremony, Takshaka himself will willingly enter the flames of the sacrificial fire, ready to consume all the snakes. King Janamejaya thus began preparations to conduct the snake sacrifice, which aimed to obliterate Takshaka and his progeny for generations to come. Thus began the ritualistic massacre that had long been foretold by various curses from the past. Fifth tale. Sage Bhrigu casts a curse on the fire sacrificial. In ancient times, long before the birth of King Janamejaya, the fire sacrificial was cursed by the sage Bhrigu. The sage uttered to the fire, "O fire, you shall remain insatiable and consume everything." The fire understood that Brigu was angry because, during his absence when he had gone to a royal coronation ceremony at the palace, the fire had revealed to the demon Rakshasa Pulama that Pulama was his wife. The Rakshasa, wandering through the forest, came upon Brigu's hermitage and, upon seeing Pulama, completely lost his senses. He believed that the woman greeting him with fruits was his former beloved Pulama, whom Pulama's father had given away to his rival, the Brahmin Brigu. Inside the hermitage hall, the Rakshasa saw the blazing fire sacrificial with its 7 tongues of flame. He began to suspect that the fire might reveal the truth about whether Pulama was indeed Brigu's wife. He threatened that if the fire did not disclose the truth, he would abduct her because he was jealous that Brigu was enjoying her company. The Raksasa's request terrified the fire sacrificial. The fire cannot lie, but revealing the truth would subject it to a curse from Brigu. The fire was afraid of the consequences and thought that it couldn't tell the truth or lie. The fire sacrificial withdrew from the rituals conducted by the Brahmins. Later, upon Brigu's return to the hermitage and upon learning from Pulama that the fire sacrificial had disclosed the secret, he cast his curse upon it. The fire realized it couldn't curse Brigu, as it hadn't committed any wrongdoing. The fire was aligned with the law and had a duty to speak the truth regarding facts. The fire explained that it was essential in sacrificial rituals, serving as the mouths of the gods and ancestors. Offerings were placed into these mouths, and then conveyed as nourishment to the gods. The fire asked Brigu, "So how can these mouths, which are the mouths of the gods, become insatiable and consume everything?" Unable to find an answer to this question and unwilling to accept the revulsion resulting from his own curse, the fire sacrificial withdrew from the rituals conducted by the Brahmins. Without the fire sacrificial, all living beings lost the ability to chant sacred mantras, make offerings, and participate in ceremonies honoring their ancestors. Their lives became impoverished and unhappy. The Brahmins who participated in the rituals appealed to the gods for help, informing them that they had lost the fire sacrificial, resulting in the loss of rituals and the way of life in the 3 worlds. The gods were unable to find a solution to this problem, so they took the Brahmins to Brahma, the creator of the world. They beseeched him to explain how to retrieve the fire sacrificial. Brahma summoned the fire before him and spoke gently. "O fire, you are both the creator and destroyer of all worlds. You provide sustenance to the 3 worlds and are a crucial element in rituals. Behave in accordance with the law for the survival of the rituals. Almighty fire, how is it possible for you, who purify everything in this world, to lose your way? You shall no longer remain insatiable for everything offered into your mouths. You shall accept only specific portions, and what burns within your flames shall be purified. O fire, you are a power that originates from within yourself. Accept this curse and move in harmony with the law, receiving both what belongs to the gods and what is destined for you when it is offered into your mouths." Brahma's words relieved the fire of its guilt, and it returned to the rituals, bringing joy to all beings. From then on, it needed to be fed and occasionally destroyed to satisfy its own hunger. 6th Tale. The Brahmin Ruru, son of Pramati, releases the 1,000-footed Brahmin from the curse of being a lizard. The duty of seeking revenge against snakes fell upon the warriors, while the Brahmins were entrusted with the role of protecting snakes from this vengeance. This lesson was learned by the Brahmin Ruru, the son of Pramati, a descendant of Jawana and the great-grandson of Brigu. His actions were driven by the desire for vengeance for the death of his beloved Pramadwara, who had been fatally bitten by a venomous snake. The story of Pramadwara began with the divine union of the king of the Gandharvas and the beautiful Apsara Menaka, who abandoned her newborn daughter on the bank of a river near the hermitage of the mighty ascetic Stulakesha. The Brahmin found the abandoned infant, took her in, and raised her as his own daughter. When Pramadwara grew into a beautiful young woman, the young Brahmin Ruru fell in love with her, even though he practiced semen retention and self-control. Brahmin Stulakesha agreed to give her to him as his wife, and everything seemed to be going splendidly. However, a tragic accident occurred a few days before their wedding when Pramadwara, playing in the meadow, accidentally bit a sleeping snake, which led to her sudden death. Devastated, Ruru ventured deep into the forest, enumerating his merits such as practicing asceticism, respecting his elders, practicing self-control, vows, and self-sacrifice for the benefit of all living beings. He prayed to the gods to restore Pramadwara's life as compensation for his merits. At that moment, a messenger of the gods appeared before him and explained that his pleas were in vain because it was impossible to bring a mortal being back to life. However, there was one exception. Pramadwara could return to life for a certain period if Ruru gave up half of his own life. Ruru agreed, but he swore that as long as he had life left, he would seek vengeance against snakes. And indeed, whenever he encountered a snake, he immediately killed it with a stick. One day, while walking through the forest, Ruru noticed a lizard sunning itself. Without hesitation, he raised his stick to strike it, but the lizard spoke. "O Brahmin, I have done nothing wrong. Why do you attack an innocent lizard?" Ruru replied, "O lizard, I am here to seek vengeance against all snakes for the death of my beloved." However, the lizard convinced him that it was not a snake, but a lizard suffering from his vengeance due to its resemblance to a snake. Despite his strong desire, Ruru did not kill the lizard, worried that it might be some Brahmin in disguise as a lizard. Wanting to learn the truth and ease the lizard's anger, Ruru asked for further explanations and for the lizard to reveal its true identity. The lizard disclosed that it was once the 1,000-footed Brahmin but had been cursed by its friend Kagama, who had turned it into a lizard. Kagama cursed it because he had been frightened by a snake in the grass during his sacrificial ritual. However, he later promised to release it from the curse when it met Brahmin Ruru, the son of Pramati. Cursed in the form of a lizard, the 1,000-footed Brahmin looked at Ruru, the son of Pramati, and said to him, "O Brahmin, you are now here, allowing me to return to my original form. In exchange for your help, I will reveal to you a secret that will bring you great benefit. A Brahmin should not harm any living being because avoiding violence is the most important principle among all living creatures. The sacred scriptures state that a Brahmin should be a knower of the Vedas, friendly, and always ready to provide safety to every living being. Avoiding harm, speaking the truth, and forgiveness are more important than defending the Vedas. Revenge, fear, and defense against an enemy are the law of warriors. It is the warriors who are responsible for seeking revenge against snakes for their wrongdoings, while the Brahmins should protect snakes from this vengeance, as revenge tends to perpetuate a cycle." Seventh Tale: The Churning of the Ocean and the Elixir of Immortality. The very decree of the snake sacrifice by King Janamejaya was long foretold in destiny, conditioned by the cursed curse of the mother of snakes, Kadru. This event took place in ancient times, at the very beginning of the universe when the gods were still weak and needed the elixir of immortality known as Soma to sustain their lives. This elixir was ultimately created through their collective efforts in churning the ocean. The idea of churning the ocean originated from the counsel of Vishnu, Narayana, given to the gods as they gathered on Mount Meru, which abounded with treasures, in search of a way to produce Soma. The gods concluded that it was necessary to extract the Mandara mountain from the earth, which was a playground for Kinnaras with horse heads, divine-looking humans, and Apsaras nymphs. They turned to Vishnu and Brahma for permission to undertake this operation, but when they received their consent, they found themselves too weak to excavate the mountain from the ground. Brahma then summoned the serpent Ananta, and Narayana ordered him to extract the defiant mountain, covered with forests teeming with wild beasts. The gods transported the extracted mountain to the shore of the ocean and asked the ocean to agree to be churned, similar to milk being churned into butter. The ocean replied, "O gods, I will try to withstand the powerful strikes of Mount Mandara, provided you reserve some Soma for me." With the promise to provide the ocean with an appropriate amount of Soma, the gods and demons, Asuras, asked the king of tortoises, Akupara, to serve as the base for Mount Mandara and its support. Indra, the leader of the gods, held the mountain on its summit, and thus, the gods created a tool for churning the ocean out of the mountain. They used the serpent Vasuki as the rope and began winding it around the mountain, commencing the churning of the ocean, which stored water as its treasures. The demons, Asuras, and giants, Danavas, held Vasuki by the head, and the gods held it by the tail. The snake Ananta, also known as Shisha, stood next to the blessed Narayana and moved Vasuki's head up and down. As a result of this activity, Vasuki emitted fire and smoke, creating powerful storm clouds that began pouring down on the gods, weakened by the heat and fatigue. From the mountain's peak, there fell on them a rain of flowers, and from the ocean's depths, there emerged a roar resembling thunder. This was the sound of living beings crushed in the depths by this enormous mountain. Huge trees and bird nests, torn from the mountain's summit during its rotations, fell into the ocean. From the striking of trees, fire arose, which spread across the mountain, consuming great elephants, tigers, and other forest inhabitants. Indra quenched the burning mountain with rain, and from this mixture of herb juices and various types of resin, melted gold emerged. The ocean's water transformed into milk, carrying butter mixed with the finest essences. However, the elixir of immortality itself had not yet appeared in the waters of the ocean. The gods turned to Brahma. "O Brahma, both we and the Danavas, as well as the snakes, are very exhausted because this churning has been going on for so long. Without the help of the supreme god, Narayana, we are powerless and cannot produce the elixir." Brahma turned to Narayana. "O Vishnu, give them strength, for you are their last hope." Vishnu responded, addressing everyone. "O you who have taken up this challenge of churning the ocean, gather new strength. Shake the ocean again and turn it." Those who heard his call gained new energy and resumed their work, mixing the ocean's milk. At that moment, the sun and the moon emerged from it, and from the flowing butter, the goddess Lakshmi appeared, dressed in white attire and a symbol of prosperity, the goddess of drinks, as well as the white horse Achalaisravas. They all followed the sun towards where the gods awaited. The magnificent gem Kaustubha, adorning Narayana's chest, also appeared, as did Dhanvantari, the god and physician of the gods, holding a vessel with soma in his hands. When the Danavas and Daityas saw the fulfillment of this miracle and stole soma from the gods, Vishnu assumed the form of a beautiful woman and mingled among them, depriving them of the ability to comprehend and persuading them to give up the elixir, believing they were gifting a beautiful woman. When Narayana, incarnated as a woman, joined the gods and took soma, one of the Danavas named Rahu assumed the form of a god and also attempted to drink soma. However, the sun and the moon recognized him and informed the gods of the deception. Vishnu, using his Sudarshana chakra, severed Rahu's head, which fell to the ground. Rahu never forgave the sun and the moon and continues to periodically devour them. In the meantime, Vishnu discarded his female form and attacked the Danavas. During the great battle between the gods and the demon Asuras near the sea's shores, blood flowed in torrents, and the sun's rays took on a bloody hue. The battle turned into a real massacre when Narayana appeared alongside Nara, wielding his divine bow. Seeing Nara's bow, Narayana used his Sudarshana chakra to strike down the demons. As Narayana covered the sky with arrows, the demons buried themselves in the earth or plunged into the salty sea to escape the gods' wrath. In the end, the gods secured victory, reclaiming the elixir of immortality for themselves. Mount Mandara was once again placed in its position, the sky cleared of stormy clouds, and the elixir was safely stored away. The gods consumed it during their offerings, entering a state of ecstatic joy. Eighth tale, Kadru, the mother of snakes, cast a curse on her sons. The curse cast upon the snakes had its origins in ancient times, in those days when sages and gods wove the threads of destiny into the fabric of the past. During that time, Pradapati, the magnificent creator of the universe, gave his two beautiful daughters, Kadru and Vinata, as wives to the sage Kashyapa, whose wisdom equaled that of Pradapati himself. One day, as time flowed as peacefully as a river's current through the trees, the sage Kashyapa promised his wives that he would grant them each a boon, filling them with extraordinary ecstasy. Kadru, inspired by a dream, asked for 1,000 magnificent serpents as her sons. Vinata, with a humble heart, asked for only 2 sons but desired that they surpass Kadra's sons in power, beauty, and dominion. Kashyapa granted both wives' wishes, with the condition that Kadra's first son would be equal to Vinata's, and the second would be only half as powerful as Vinata's. Years passed, as the river's gentle current does, and Kadra laid 1,000 eggs, while Vinata laid only 2. The eggs were placed in boiling pots, and after 5 ages had passed, serpents hatched from Kadra's eggs. However, Vinata's eggs did not yield any results. Impatient and feeling deceived, Vinata broke one of her eggs and saw her son Aruna, whose body was only partially formed and imperfect. Aruna, filled with anger due to his mother's impatience, cursed her, saying, "O mother, it is your uncontrollable haste that has led to my disability. Therefore, I curse you to be enslaved by your sister Kadru for 5 centuries. You will only be liberated by my brother Garuda, provided you maintain patience and do not damage his egg for 5 centuries, thereby preserving his body from deformity." Then Aruna ascended to the sky and became the Red Dawn. One day, Kadru said to Vinata, "Dear sister, try to guess the color of this magnificent horse, Ravas, which emerged from the churning of the ocean." Vinata replied, "Sister, I guess the horse is white." However, Kadru insisted that the horse had a black tail. They decided to make a bet, in which the loser would become the slave of the winner. Vinata agreed to the bet, and they both agreed to go to the ocean shore the next morning to determine the horse's color. As Vinata went to sleep, Kadru, eager to win the bet, decided to manipulate the truth. She instructed her sons to climb onto the horse's tail and pretend to be its black hairs. However, the snakes refused to obey her. Enraged, Kadru then cast a curse upon them, proclaiming that all snakes, as well as their future generations, would be burned during the great snake sacrifice, which King Janamejaya would perform. Brahma, the grandfather of the universe, heard the curse and, while considering it harsh and contradicting the natural order, approved it, looking at the long-term welfare of all beings. The snakes became strong, venomous, and malevolent. In concern for the welfare of all beings, Brahma mitigated the snake's venom, bestowing upon the sage Kashyapa the gift of healing from snake bites. The next morning, at sunrise, the 2 sisters, Kadru and Vinata, who had risked a bet of slavery, hurried toward the ocean. They wished to see the horse with their own eyes and assess its color. The ocean lay before them, a realm of waters where life was full of dangers. It was inhabited by crocodiles and monsters that devoured even whales. The ocean was a place teeming with beings of various shapes and colors, terrifying and awe-inspiring, surpassing all imagination. It was the source of all wealth, the abode of Varuna, the place where sea serpents frolicked, the lord of rivers in which underwater fire burned, and where he kept his dungeons, a terror to all beings. It was the source of the elixir of immortality, pulsating with whirlpools and waves. In these waves, Lord Vishnu, in his wild incarnation, discovered the submerged land, while the sage Atri dedicated hundreds of years to reach its unfathomable depths. It served as Lord Vishnu's bed, the most powerful of gods, who, at the dawn of a new eon, sleeps at its depths, submerged in his own consciousness. In it, this holy river, with immeasurable banks and unfathomable depths, the river lord offered his gifts, casting them into the flames of the horse's head fire. The sisters looked once more at the ocean, reflecting the sky, and saw thousands of rivers flowing into its depths, while the terrifying roars of ocean inhabitants echoed from afar. Flying like birds, they reached the horse Ravas. Kadru recognized her sons, who, frightened by the curse, clung to its tail, resembling black hares. She saw Vinata as her slave and felt satisfaction in her victory. Vinata, dejected and in despair, submitted to her fate and became her sister's slave. Tale 9, Garuda, the Serpent Eater and the Second Indra. After 500 years had passed, the second son of Vinata was born, and his name was Garuda. His development was peaceful, undisturbed by his mother's impatience. When he reached his full power, piercing the shell of his egg, he became a living flame, shining in his most potent aspect like a glowing sphere of fire. In an instant, he assumed gigantic proportions and soared into the sky. The gods, humbled by his power, turned to him with a request, saying, "O fire, your great mass is approaching us. Let it grow no further, and let it not attempt to consume us all." But fire replied, "O gods, you are mistaken in thinking that it is I who burn. The flame you see is Garuda, who is equal to me in fiery intensity." The gods and sages approached Garuda, paying him homage in their song. "O king of birds," they sang, "we have heard of your fiery glory. You are like the light that illuminates everything, both that which moves and that which stands still, eclipsing the brilliance of the sun. You are the beginning and the end of all that exists, and you are eternal, though short-lived. You are like an angry sun, consuming all living beings like sacrificial fire. You are the one who, at the time of the universe's dissolution, becomes terrifying, rising upward to conclude the eon's fall. O king of birds, we beseech your protection. O noble Garuda, soaring amidst the clouds, mighty bird, we direct our prayers to you." Upon hearing these words full of reverence from the gods and sages, Garuda calmed his flame. The story of Garuda traces back to the curse that the great ascetics and sages, the Walakilas, cast upon the god Indra. This occurred in very distant times when the sage Kashyapa served as Prajapati, lord of creatures, and performed a sacrifice, hoping for the appearance of offspring. He asked the entire assembly of gods, who came to assist in the ritual, to bring suitable wood for igniting the sacrificial fire. When Indra, effortlessly carrying a massive log of wood, saw the group of Walakilas, who were trembling with effort while carrying only leaves, he burst into laughter and proudly passed over them. Indra's arrogant behavior angered the Walakilas and filled them with resentment. In their quest for revenge, they initiated a grand sacrificial ceremony and cast a curse upon Indra, saying, "O Indra, let another Indra be born from our offering, who will become a terror to you, equally powerful and brave as you." Indra, upon hearing this terrifying curse, was filled with fear and sought the help of the sage Kashyapa. The sage approached the Walakilas and said, "O Walakilas, may your words not violate the divine obligations. Indra has been designated as the king of the three worlds by the Brahmins. Please modify your wish so that the second Indra is born not as a god but as a bird." The ascetics replied, "O great sage, we are ready to accept your request. Our offering, in which we asked for the birth of another Indra, coincides with your request for progeny. Therefore, let us entrust you with control over our offering and its fruits, and you may choose a son who will become the second Indra." In this way, the sage Kashyapa received the promise of Garuda's birth, who would be the second Indra and a formidable rival to the king of the gods. Garuda, a giant bird of immense size and strength, after granting the god's request and extinguishing his own fire, soared across the ocean to free his unfortunate mother, Vinata, who had become a slave to her sister Kadru. One day, Kadru demanded that Vinata and her son carry her and her sons to an island in a bay inhabited by serpents. Vinata, obediently submitting to her sister, embarked on a long journey with her devoted son, Garuda. Unfortunately, during the flight, Garuda came too close to the sun, causing the serpents, weakened by the heat, to fall to the ground in a stupefied state. Seeing her sons in a pitiable condition, Kadru called upon Indra, begging him for rain. In response to her pleas, Indra drenched the serpents with abundant rain, allowing them to reach the island safely. However, the serpents could not stay on that beautiful island for long because, during their flight over the ocean, they spotted even more splendid islands and instructed Garuda to carry them to one of those islands. Deeply contemplating, Garuda asked his mother to explain why she had to fulfill all the wishes and commands of the serpents, and their mother, Kadru. Vinata told him how the serpents had ensnared her in a wager and deceived her. Garuda fell into deep sorrow and, turning to the serpents, said, "O serpents, tell me the truth. Is there anything I can do to change my fate and cease to be your slave?" The serpents replied, O Garuda, steal the elixir of immortality from the gods and bring it to us. If you can accomplish this extraordinary feat, you and your mother will be freed from our bondage, Garuda said to his mother. O mother, I am embarking on a long journey to bring the elixir to the serpents and thus free us from captivity. But before that, I need to gain strength and have something to eat. Vinata advised her son to go to the island of Nisadas and devour thousands of Nisadas. However, she warned him to spit out Brahmins, whom he could recognize by their burning taste, as it is essential to avoid killing Brahmins who hold a special place in society as teachers and priests. An angered Brahmin is as powerful as fire, poison, or a sword. Out of love for her mighty son, Vinata blessed him and asked the wind, moon, sun, and fire to protect him on his journey. Hungry, Garuda began his journey, descending upon the Nisada island like the end of time. He created a massive cloud of dust that evaporated water and shook the mountains. The Nisadas, bewildered and disoriented by the dust, willingly entered his open beak when he lay in their path, waiting. Thus, following his mother's advice, he exterminated this fish-eating race, sparing only a Brahmin with a burning taste and his wife. However, the Nisadas did not satisfy his hunger. Continuing his search for something to eat, he soared back up and spotted his father, the sage Kashyapa. He told his father that he planned to steal the god's elixir of immortality to fulfill the serpent's wish and free his mother from captivity. But he was still hungry and needed strength. Sage Kashyapa instructed his son to consume 2 Brahmin brothers who had been transformed into an elephant and a tortoise due to their desires and quarrels. The younger brother, Supratika, had demanded a division of property from the elder brother, Vibhavasu, but he refused, claiming that divisions were the source of conflicts. The younger brother did not relent, and so the brothers fought until they became a colossal elephant and a giant tortoise. Sage Kashyapa told Garuda, O son, devour these 2 Brahmin brothers who lost their sound judgment due to their fighting and greed. Garuda seized the elephant and the tortoise in his mighty talons and soared into the air. He then went to a tall banyan tree branch at the tree's request to peacefully enjoy his meal. However, the tree, though a home to many birds, began to tremble under Garuda's weight, and the branch broke when the bird perched on it. Nonetheless, Garuda managed to hold on to the remaining fragment of the branch and noticed that the Brahmin brothers, the Walakilas, hung upside down from that branch. Not wanting to harm them, Garuda picked them up with his beak and ascended into the sky. To avoid scorching the Walakilas with the sun, Garuda refrained from flying too close to the heavens. Nevertheless, his powerful wings and majestic flights caused unprecedented phenomena on Earth. Mountains trembled, and trees and plants fell to the ground. Indra, the king of gods, felt threatened and began to shower the earth with blood. The rain of blood also descended upon the earth, and the gods and celestial lights lost their brilliance. All of this was caused by the presence of Garuda, a bird divine as fire, of unmatched strength, who quickly became a source of terror for all living beings. Sage Kashyapa warned Garuda about the anger of the Walakilas, who could incinerate him for his presence in their vicinity. Holding the broken branch in his beak and the elephant and tortoise in his talons, Garuda turned to Sage Kashyapa, asking, O father, could you please indicate a place free of Brahmins where I can peacefully consume my meal, consisting of the elephant and the tortoise? Kashyapa pointed him to a location in the mountains where there were no Brahmins, and Garuda set off in that direction, carrying his trophies. After satisfying his hunger, he soared into the sky once again, heading towards the realm of the gods. However, as he approached, they began to witness various ominous signs. What was happening struck fear even into the hearts of the gods. Indra's lightning bolts ignited with pain, and the heavens began to rain down fiery meteors. The gods' own weapons turned against them, and the winds howled in turbulent gusts, while thunder rumbled from the clouds. Indra started to shed blood upon the earth. The ornate garlands of the gods faded, and the celestial lights dimmed. Falling stars carried streams of blood, and the rising dust clouded the brilliance of the gods' diadems. Indra, the god of countless offerings, alarmed by these signs, turned to the chief priest of the gods, Brihaspati, asking him for the cause of these events. Brihaspati explained, "O king of gods, you now witness the consequences of your mistake and negligence. The sage Walakilas armed themselves against you through their ascetic power and created this extraordinary bird, the son of sage Kushyapa and Vinata. He has come here at the request of the serpents to steal the elixir of immortality, and his power is so immense that he is capable of achieving what is considered impossible." Indra, without losing faith, immediately informed the guardians of the elixir about the threat and ordered the army of gods to prepare for the defense of the elixir. Despite being greatly astonished by this attack, the gods adorned themselves in magnificent golden armor adorned with jewels, grasped their dazzling divine weapons, and formed ranks, ready to defend access to the elixir. Known as the destroyers of great demon cities, possessing unmatched strength, they wholeheartedly organized their ranks to defend the elixir. The radiance of their armor and weapons dazzled, and their presence illuminated the space like fire, the vast battlefield filled with their tight formations, and thousands of maces shimmered in the sun, making it seem as if they surpassed the boundaries of the sky. However, as Garuda approached, the armies of the gods began to fall into chaos. Instead of attacking the enemy, the gods, trembling all over, directed their weapons towards each other. Among the gods stood the divine architect Viswakarma, the mightiest defender of Soma, who fell dead, torn apart by the wings and talons of the bird. A great cloud of dust trailing behind Garuda covered the world in darkness, further complicating the situation. Garuda exacerbated the chaos, scattering the gods with flaps of his wings and strikes of his beak. Indra, witnessing the defeat of his army, summoned the wind to help disperse the dust cloud. When all the gods finally noticed the enemy, they rushed to attack him simultaneously. Garuda soared upward and hung motionless in the heavens, repelling the attacks. Despite being assaulted from all sides, he remained unshaken and continued to fight, dealing blows and devastating the units of the gods with wing strikes. Disoriented and broken, the gods' forces began to flee, leaving bloodstains in their wake. Those who engaged in individual combat were torn to pieces like by the god Shiva. Many valiant warriors lay wounded on the battlefield, resembling torn clouds pouring blood. Finally, having deprived all the gods of life, Garuda crossed over their bodies and set out in search of the elixir. The entire sky blazed with fire, consuming all evil. Garuda assumed 90 mouths to drink water from the rivers and quench the raging fire. He then reduced himself to a tiny golden form radiant as the sun's rays to enter the chamber where the elixir was stored. However, access to the elixir was guarded by a rotating wheel with blades and a sharp edge. Garuda slipped between its spokes, changing his form to match its motion. Overcoming this obstacle, he encountered two massive fiery serpents with tongues as sharp as lightning. They were eternally wrathful and uncontrollable, reducing to ashes anything their gaze fell upon. Garuda blinded them with dust and passed by their inert bodies, making his way toward the elixir. He seized it, and shattering the rotating wheel on his way back, soared into the air. He did not drink a single drop of the elixir, but carefully wrapped it, and embarked towards the setting sun. Along the way, he encountered Lord Vishnu, who was pleased with his success. He asked Garuda to make 2 requests that he promised to fulfill. Garuda requested that he always stand above Vishnu and that he never age or die, even without the help of the elixir. Vishnu agreed to these requests. Then, Garuda asked Vishnu to make 1 request in return, which he promised to fulfill. Vishnu asked for the same thing, that he always stand above Garuda. As Garuda ascended upward, holding the elixir, Indra spotted him and couldn't bear the loss of the elixir. He struck Garuda heavily with his thunderbolt. However, this bolt didn't harm Garuda. Nevertheless, during the struggle that ensued, Garuda lost a single feather, which fell to the ground. With a smile, Garuda said to Indra, "O you who have offered hundreds of sacrifices, let this feather from your thunderbolt be a symbol of our friendship. I have released it from me as a gesture to show that I am ready for reconciliation." As he spoke, all witnesses, both gods and creatures, admired the falling feather and referred to Garuda as the great bird with bright wings. Indra, upon hearing these expressions of praise, understood that Garuda was a magnificent being. He asked Garuda for his friendship and assured him that he wanted to understand the limits of his power. Garuda replied, "O Indra, I know that boasting about one's strength without reason is not proper, but since you call me your friend and request it, I will explain my invincible power. My strength is so great that I can lift the earth and all the worlds with just one feather," Indra said. "O Garuda, you are eternal and stand above all. Please fulfill my great request. I know you don't need the elixir yourself to live forever. Therefore, give it back to the gods, for the serpents for whom you stole it might mock us forever." Hearing this, Garuda responded, "O Indra, ruler of the three worlds, I stole the soma from the gods to achieve my goal and free my mother from being a slave to her sister. However, I have no intention of giving it to the serpents for drinking. If you wish to give it to the gods, wait until I place it on the ground. Then you can pick it up and take it." Indra replied, "O Garuda, so be it." The thought of the serpents, the sons of Kadru, and the deceit that turned his mother into a slave filled Garuda with great sorrow. He said to Indra, "O Indra, although I am the lord of all, I still want to become indebted to you. Therefore, grant my request and allow me to feed on serpents." Indra replied, "O Garuda, so be it." Garuda returned to his mother, Vinata, and when he saw the serpents, he said, "O serpents, I have returned and brought the elixir of immortality. I have done what you asked, so release my mother from captivity." When the serpents agreed to release Vinata, Garuda continued, "O serpents, I will place the elixir that I stole for you here on the Dharma grass. Before you start drinking it, go and bathe and purify yourselves." When the serpents went to the water to ritually purify themselves, Garuda placed the vessel on the ground, and Indra immediately took it and carried it back to heaven. Meanwhile, the serpents, after their prayers and ritual purification, returned to the spot where Garuda had placed the vessel with the soma. They realized that the vessel had been stolen, and they began to lick the sharp dharma grass on which it had stood. Their tongues took on a sharp form, like forks, from licking the grass like a dagger, and the stalks of dharma grass became ritually pure because they had come into contact with the elixir. Since that time, dharma grass has been used during ritual offerings. After accomplishing his great deed, Garuda, the bird with bright wings who fed on serpents, set off into the jungle with his mother, Vinata. All the birds paid him homage, and he never complained about a lack of fame, which gladdened his mother's heart. Tale 10. Seshanunta, the ascetic serpent. These were ancient times when snakes were becoming more powerful, venomous, and invulnerable. However, one of them, named Sesha, decided to leave his mother Kadru and engage in spiritual austerities in the dense jungles. He roamed through sacred groves and visited ancient temples, perfecting his body and mind. Great Brahma, the giver of life and the eldest among immortal beings, observed with concern Sesha's ascetic practices. He asked him, "O innocent serpent, what do you desire? What blessing do you seek from me to strengthen the power of snakes over the world? Your rigorous austerities seem to be nothing but poison that poisons this creation. Show me the wish that resides in your soul so I may fulfill it." Sesha, with beautiful eyes and a wise heart, replied, "O Brahma, my brothers lack reason, and living in their company has become unbearable. They do not care about Vinata, my mother, and her sons, including Garuda, our common brother. This breeds hatred and conflicts among them. Please forgive me for what I am about to do. I undertake severe austerities to cleanse our lineages of this conflict. I no longer wish to be bound to them." Brahma smiled understandingly and said, "O serpent, let not your thoughts revolve around your brothers. I understand the difficulties you face, but remember that your fate is connected to the fate of other beings. You point towards Dharma and the pursuit of perfection. Utilize this wisdom to contribute to a greater good. I am pleased with you. Now tell me how I can fulfill your wish." Sesha looked at Brahma and replied, "O Brahma, this is my wish precisely. Please enable me to deepen my contemplation of Dharma, peace, and asceticism, which are my goals." Brahma smiled once more and said, "O best of serpents, your asceticism and spiritual practice are commendable. Let it be as you wish. Now, with Garuda as your assistant, descend underground, which trembles, embrace it with your body, and hold it firmly to give it stability. By fulfilling this role, you will render me a great service." Sesha listened to Brahma's words and went towards the rift in the earth that opened before him. There, he remained for ages, supporting the earth on his head, embracing it at the ocean level. As Brahma observed this extraordinary event, he said, "O Sesha, you are the greatest among serpents. You are the personification of Dharma, upholding the earth with your coiled knots. Your support is equal to what I and Indra, the king of gods, offer." Tale 11. The efforts of the snake Vasuki to prevent the threat of total annihilation of snakes. In ancient times, as with many events, the decree of the snake sacrifice by King Janamejaya was the result of a complex web of past events and a curse cast by the mother of snakes, Kadru. This curse had set an inevitable fate for the snakes, but the future was to respond to it by sending a savior in the form of a young Brahmin named Astika. The snake Vasuki, aware of the curse that had loomed over the snakes since the time of Kadru, pondered for a long time on how to mitigate it and save his species from impending doom. One day, he decided to share his thoughts with his brothers, especially those who upheld the principles of Dharma. He said, "O my innocent brothers, we are burdened with a curse that we cannot ignore. Curses can usually be overcome, but a mother's curse is something more challenging. We are faced with an inevitable confrontation with the unchanging and mighty truth, which fills my heart with fear. Not even the invincible god Brahma could prevent our mother from casting the curse, which suggests that we must find the antidote to this dark spell ourselves to avoid the ritual slaughter of snakes that King Janamejaya is planning." Various ideas were proposed among the snakes. Some suggested that one of them should assume the role of the chief Brahmin responsible for conducting the sacrifice, and try to convince the king to abandon the endeavor. Others proposed a drastic tactic of killing every chief Brahmin designated to oversee the sacrifice. However, the snakes with pure hearts did not favor these ideas, as they relied on deceit and crime, which would only exacerbate the situation. They believed that the only path to peace and avoiding catastrophe was to respect Dharma, for any violation of this order would lead to the destruction of the universe. Righteous Vasuki rejected all the unrighteous proposals and emphasized that the considered ideas were immature and unworthy of snakes. He expected that only a plan based on the principles of Dharma could yield the desired results. At this point, a snake named Elapatra spoke up. He said, "O snakes, for a long time, we have been sentenced to the ritual slaughter of snakes by King Janamejaya. If someone is to be the savior of our species, it must be a person chosen by fate. If fate has sent this curse upon us, then it is only in fate that we can seek salvation. Listen to what hope Brahma has given us. When our mother cast the curse upon us, I was so terrified that I climbed onto her lap and heard the gods conversing with the great Brahman of the universe. They said, 'O Brahma, these snakes are dangerous. How is it possible that a mother first gives birth to sons and then casts a curse upon them? Only wicked Kadra could do such a thing, even before your eyes. What's worse, you yourself approved this curse. Please explain why you did so.' To this, Brahma replied, 'O gods, there are already enough snakes in the world. They are dangerous, deadly brave, and kill other living beings with their venom. I did not stop the mother from casting the curse for the greater good of all living beings. However, I can reassure you. The curse only affects malicious and venomous snakes, not those who adhere to Dharma. Let me reveal to you the way by which true snakes can save themselves from the curse if they act according to a specific plan. One day, in the Jajwara family, an ascetic named Jarakuru will be born who will rule over his senses. He will also have a son, an ascetic named Astika, whose destiny is to stop the ritual slaughter of snakes and save those who follow Dharma. Astika's mother will be the wife of the sage Jarakuru, bearing the same name. Elapatra concluded his narrative, saying to Vasuki, "Your sister is named Jarakuru. Be ready to give her to the sage Jarakuru when he is born and wishes to start a family. Then Astika, our deliverer, can come into the world." All the snakes enthusiastically supported this plan. From that day on, when Elapatra spoke his profound words, Vasuki anxiously awaited the birth of the sage Jarakuru. Brahma had promised him the birth of Astika after Vasuki had lent his body as the rope for churning the ocean during the creation of the elixir of immortality. When that task was completed, the gods brought Vasuki before Brahma, asking him to fulfill his favor and release the snakes from the curse. Brahma said, "O immortal ones, I cannot revoke the curse, but I can help the snakes find a way to overcome it. Vasuki, convey this information to the snakes and lead them with the wisdom of Elapatra. Time will show that only malevolent and venomous snakes will be destroyed, while those who live in accordance with Dharma will endure. When the appropriate time comes, you must give your sister to the sage Jarakuru in accordance with Elapatra's prophecy. Then better days will dawn for the snakes." Vasuki remembered these words of Brahma and instructed the snakes to find the sage Jarakuru and follow him so they wouldn't miss the moment when he chose to marry. Tale 12. The Birth of the Brahmin Astika. The Brahmin named Jarakuru, equaling Pratapati in wisdom, was a great sage dedicated to severe asceticism. He renounced all worldly desires, possessed deep knowledge of Brahminical law, and steadfastly upheld his vows. He had never contemplated marriage or having offspring until one day, during his journey through the wild jungle, he came across a cave of his ancestors from the Jajwara lineage. Inside the cave, hanging upside down, he saw his forefathers' former Brahmins, impaled on blades of grass that he could easily chew through, even as a rat. The forefathers narrated their story to him, explaining that their destiny was tied to the lack of offspring to carry on their cultural heritage and perform necessary rituals. As the last descendants of their lineage, they beseeched Jarakuru to have sons who would fulfill their expectations and carry forward the legacy. Though Jarakuru had never considered taking a wife, out of love for his forefathers, he agreed to marry on one condition: his wife must bear the same name as him and must be given to him as a gift. He was a poor sage and couldn't support a wife himself. When the snakes learned of Jarakuru, who was wandering through the jungle and seeking a wife with the same name, they immediately informed Vasuki. Vasuki offered him his sister, believing that Jarakuru was the right person to fulfill their long-standing desire. The ascetic agreed to the marriage but declared that he would not be able to provide for his wife since he led a life of minimal material needs. In concern for his sister and the future savior of the snakes, Vasuki agreed to assume the financial responsibilities. Vasuki offered his sister to Jarakuru in a traditional manner, complete with rituals. During their wedding night, Jarakuru warned his wife, saying, "Remember never to engage in any activity that might disturb me. If it happens, I will leave you and our home." One day, Jarakuru fell into a deep sleep with his head resting on his wife's lap, and he slept so long that the sun was nearing its setting, and the evening rituals were fast approaching. His wife grew anxious because waking him before sunrise would harm his religious practices and asceticism, which would, in turn, diminish his merits. On the other hand, leaving him to sleep would also be equally bad, as it would also lead to his anger. She understood that both options had their negative consequences but decided that causing the loss of merits was the lesser evil compared to provoking her husband's wrath. Therefore, she woke him up. As she anticipated, Jarakuru woke up in anger and made the decision to leave his wife and return to the life of an ascetic. Seeing this, his wife told him, "Husband, do not leave me, for the purpose of our marriage is to conceive a son who will deliver our snake race from the curse cast by their mother. There are no signs yet of such a son being born." Jarakuru replied, "Snake woman, we have already conceived a son who will be born soon. He will be a great sage, bright as fire, leading our race of wanderers to liberation. Now I must return to the wild jungle to engage in prayers and contemplation." Vasuki learned of Jarakuru's decision and was initially worried that the goal of their marriage had not been fulfilled. However, his sister reassured him that their deliverer had been conceived, and they only needed to wait. Eventually, the right time arrived, and in the snake's nest, a boy was born named Astika. He was a Brahmin by his father's lineage and a snake by his mother's, growing up among snakes and learning the Vedas from the sage Bhargava, the son of Chayavana and the grandson of the sage Brigu. Tale 13. The Brahmin Astika saves the snakes from doom. The long-awaited moment, which the snakes feared the most, had arrived. Takshaka, a proud snake, decided to seek revenge for his father's death by killing King Parikshit and his son, King Janamejaya, with his venom. He wanted to avenge his father and fulfill the curse placed on the snakes by their mother. He heeded the advice of the Brahmins and ordered the snake sacrifice, thus fulfilling the mother's curse. He even agreed to be the donor in this dreadful ceremony and requested the priests to prepare all the necessary elements. The priests responsible for the preparation of the sacrifice carefully arranged the sacrificial ground according to the ceremonial rules and instructed the king on the proper procedure. However, before the ceremony could commence, a warning sign appeared, indicating that the sacrifice would be interrupted by a Brahmin. To avoid calamity, the chief architect, known as Threadholder, gave orders not to admit anyone they did not recognize onto the sacrificial grounds. As the ritual began, individual priests took on their roles, dressed in black robes, their eyes red from the fire's smoke. They recited the proper prayers, and various species of snakes started falling into the sacrificial fire. This sight caused panic among those who were still alive. The snake king, Takshaka, witnessing the massacre of his kind, went to the king of the gods, Indra, and confessed his act. He sought protection from the inevitable fate that had befallen the snakes due to the sacrifice. Indra, pleased with Takshaka's loyalty, offered him his support. He assured that he would intervene with the grandfather of the universe, Brahma, to ensure the snake's safety. Meanwhile, Vasuki, the snake leader, feeling despair and hopelessness in the face of the impending doom of his kind, turned to his sister, Jirakuru. He said to her, "My body is burning, my heart is in chaos. I've lost my sense of direction. My eyes do not see. I am ready to offer myself as a sacrifice in the fire that will consume all the snakes. The curse we have long feared has become a reality. You and your son Astika are our only hope. Please ask him to save me and our kind. Let him stop this terrible sacrifice." Jirakuru called her son, Astika, and said, "Son, the time has come to fulfill your destiny. Deliver the snakes from the curse that has haunted them since their mother's time. Carry out the promise Brahma made to us. Prevent this ritualistic massacre." Astika firmly responded, "Mother, what I promise, I will fulfill. Let Vasuki wait in peace. I will go to King Janamejaya and persuade him to halt the sacrifice." "Trust me," Vasuki expressed his concerns and burden, but Astika's words calmed him and restored his faith. Astika proclaimed, "Vasuki, be at ease. I will rescue the snakes and put an end to this cruel spectacle. Let your heart find peace, and I will take care of the rest." Astika set off toward the sacrificial site, which gleamed with wealth and people. Upon arriving, he was stopped by the guards, but using his praise of the sacrifice, he gained entry. In his words, he extolled the sacrifice as worthy of the gods and the priests as their messengers. He also emphasized the fire's desire to consume the snakes. All the participants in the ritual felt satisfied and calm. It was then that King Janamejaya told the priests, "This young Brahmin seems exceptional. He deserves a reward. Let us agree to his request, but let it happen when Takshaka arrives at the sacrifice fire ready to jump in." The priests agreed to this condition, hoping for an end to the nightmare. King Janamejaya added, "Let Takshaka be our target. The time for vengeance for the harm he has done to us has come." The priests relayed this crucial message to the king, which they found in the sacred texts foreseeing his sacrifice. The sacrificial fire also confirmed this warning, burning Takshaka, the snake who had taken refuge in Indra's palace, would not be easy. Brahmin Lohitaksha, an expert in the sacred texts, emphasized, "O king, the words of the priests are true. Indra has promised Takshaka that the fire will not consume him as long as he stays close to it." Hearing these words, the king grew agitated and pressed the priests to continue the ritual and recite the magic incantations until Indra brought Takshaka to the site. What he foresaw became a reality. When Indra finally appeared on the sacrificial grounds, Takshaka sought refuge in his robes. Though Indra had promised to protect him, the snake found no peace there and was deeply distressed. Seeing that Takshaka was under Indra's protection, King Janamejaya became even more furious. He focused his thoughts on the snake's death and ordered the priests to continue the ritual, including Indra, in order to burn Takshaka. The priests tried to convince the king to be patient, saying, "O king, calm your anger. Takshaka will soon jump into the sacrificial fire himself. You hear how he hisses in fear. Indra has abandoned him, and his body is shaken by our magic words. Now is the perfect time for Astika, this young Brahmin who praises your sacrifice, to make his request, which you have promised to fulfill." Anticipating Takshaka's imminent death, the king listened to the priest's advice and instructed Astika to make his request. Upon hearing this, Astika said to the snake Takshaka, "O snake, wait a moment," to delay his jump into the sacrificial fire. He then turned to the king and said, "O king, fulfill my request as you promised. Put an end to this sacrificial session and prevent any more snakes from falling into the flames." Although King Janamejaya was eager to continue the sacrifice and burn all the snakes, he understood that he had to keep his word. The priests reminded him of the royal Dharma and the necessity of honoring Astika's request. In the meantime, despite the ongoing sacrifice, the snake Takshaka continued to avoid the fire, hovering in the air. Astika, seeing that Indra had lost control of the snake, said, "O snake, wait." Takshaka hung in the air, his heart pounding, surrounded by fear and uncertainty, as if he were cornered by wild bulls. King Janamejaya, who was on the verge of avenging his wrongs, finally agreed to Astika's request, concluded the sacrificial session, and stopped the massacre of snakes. He rewarded the participants with wealth. Then, in accordance with the ritual, he underwent purifications, and Astika was sent back home with the offer to be a witness during the great horse sacrifice. Astika, filled with joy, accepted and returned home to share the happy turn of events with his mother and uncle Vasuki. The snakes, who had gathered there, promised to fulfill one of Astika's wishes, that anyone who heard his story would not have to fear a snake bite. The snakes replied, "O Brahmin, so shall it be." Conclusions from the text. Ritual Massacre of Snakes by King Janamejaya. 1. Wealth and Significance of Mahabharata. The first book of the Mahabharata, Adi Parva or Book of the Beginning, serves as an introduction to this monumental epic. This text illustrates how significant and rich a work the Mahabharata is in Hinduism. It is not only an epic narrative but also a treasury of myths, philosophy, ethics, and scientific theories. 2. Complexity of Hindu values. This book introduces readers to the complex Hindu values such as Dharma, moral responsibility, and loyalty to family. The ethical and moral conflict present in the text becomes a central theme of the Mahabharata. 3. Message about morality. The excerpt. Ritual Massacre of Snakes by King Janamejaya emphasizes the importance of morality and ethics in Hinduism. King Janamajaya's decision ultimately leans towards morality and sacrifice, as he chooses to halt the snake's sacrifice instead of continuing it. 4. The role of the individual in history. The story of Astika, the son of the Brahmin Jarakuru and the snake, demonstrates that an individual can influence the fate of a community and a nation. His wisdom and ability to persuade King Janamejaya to halt the ritual are significant moments in the text. 5. The significance of tradition and rituals. The text underscores the importance of tradition and rituals in Hinduism. The priests adhere to sacred scriptures and ancient traditions, and rituals play a vital role in the community's life. 6. Introduction to the Mahabharata. While ritual massacre of snakes may not be a turning point, it is a significant introductory passage that prepares readers for the more intricate and emotionally charged narratives that will follow in the Mahabharata. It's important to understand that the Mahabharata is not just an epic narrative but also a source of deep contemplation on morality, loyalty, tradition, and ethics that still hold relevance in Hinduism and inspire many people worldwide. In the religious and cultural context, Ritual Massacre of Snakes by King Janamejaya reflects several important aspects of Hinduism during those times. 1. Culture of offerings and rituals. Hinduism is a religion deeply rooted in rituals and ceremonies. This text shows that offerings and rituals were integral parts of daily religious life. King Janamejaya attempts to perform the ritual burning of snakes as an offering, expressing devotion and focus on religious practices. 2. Karma and morality. Hinduism is known for the concept of karma, the law of cause and effect. King Janamajaya's decision to halt the ritual to save the snakes is interpreted as an action in line with moral principles and good karma. It emphasizes that people in those times attached great importance to moral choices and consequences. 3. Sacred scriptures and traditions. The text refers to sacred scriptures, traditions, and scholarly knowledge that were significant in Hinduism. The priests adhere to scriptures and tradition, and rituals are conducted following the sacred instructions. This highlights that in those times, religious teachings were closely followed. 4. Role of Brahmins and priests. In Hinduism, Brahmins and priests play a crucial role as intermediaries between people and divinity. In this passage, Brahmins provide advice to the king and convince him to stop the ritual. This shows that Brahmins had significant influence on religious and social life. 5. Hindu ethical values. King Janamajaya's decision to halt the ritual is driven primarily by ethical and moral considerations. In Hinduism, as in many other religions, morality and loyalty to religious values were treated as priorities. In summary, the text, Ritual Massacre of Snakes by King Janamejaya, illustrates that people in those times placed great importance on religious practices, morality, traditions, and religious scholarship. It reflects the religious context of those times in Hinduism and how these values influenced the decisions and attitudes of the characters described in the Mahabharata.